Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We had a very eventful day. If you are worried about spoilers, look away now because I'll be talking about the Mad vs. G2 series in this video. I guess I spoiled it already with the results of the drafts right in front of you. I am currently in the hotel room because I am on the LEC broadcast, but I like to do these rundowns. If you want to book a coaching session, do it below on the Metafile link. We are quickly booking up all of the available spots. Do it before it's too late if you are interested. I'll definitely be taking a lot of clients ahead of MSI. MSI is an interesting topic. Today's result throws everything up in the air, but we'll talk about MSI a little bit later. G2 vs Mad Lions, what an interesting series. I will tell you all about my conclusions after we've gone through every individual game. We start off with game number one, G2 versus Mad Lions. We have the Cannon first pick, which is very, strong and very common. We've seen this globally, and this is a champion that no one has really figured out a way to find answers into. I think personally the tanks look the best into Cannon, the Scion, the Gragas. I'm not a believer of the Javan, honestly, and the Jace does look difficult. But nevertheless, Cannon first pick, very natural. G2 did it in the previous series too. I want to highlight Mad Lions here banning Annie. Annie's a champion that G2 didn't show a lot of prio on, but it's something that almost every team bans on red because Annie is decent into Cannon because she has priority on being able to Tibbs him first if he tries to flank or engage. And that kind of priority is very good into Cannon. But nevertheless, Mad Lions ban Annie, even though G2 hasn't shown any prio. G2 choose to ban Vi, Jace, and then Maokai. I could imagine that they're banning these champions specifically. Of course, Jace against Chasey and Vi is something that Mad Lions like to combo, and that's a ban that we saw the entire series. The Maokai is just an additional layer of ban. I imagine that if Kennen gets banned here on red, they follow up with Annie first pick. They know when Annie and Kennen is in the picture that, of course, Maokai ban is natural because you can end up then on Annie or Kennen, is what I imagine. So Kennen first pick, follow up with Gragas Rakan, and of course Rakan for Hidi is a big juicer. He's very happy with that one, and then he's setting up his AD on Zion 3. G2 follow up with Jinx and Thresh. Considering the success of Jinx, I understand why G2 would like to go in this direction. Mickey on Thresh also is something that is a classic and does super well. 4-5 Mad Lions ban Cassio to set up the Gragas mid potentially, and then they ban the Belveth. And then G2 choose to ban Malphite, a common pick into Kennen, and then Wukong jungle. Considering Vi is out of the picture and Gragas is already shown, Wukong is just one of those strong junglers on the patch, allows you to combo well with your mid laner. We have Lee Sin on 4, which is also something that combos well against Gragas, and considering Vi and Wukong is already out of the picture, Lee Sin is going to have some fine matchups in the jungle, and G2 choose to slam Viego Aurelion Sol. Aurelion Sol here kind of showcases that they imagine that Mad Lions are going to go for the Gragas mid, but instead Mad Lions pivot and send Gragas top, and then of course Delisandra gets picked on 5. So this is of course a very hard game for Aurelion Sol and Viego to operate in the 2v2 mid. I think whenever Lissandra and Lee Sin choose to kill Aurelion Sol or choose to engage in him, he doesn't have a lot of tools to disengage from that. You could maybe say that he can run cleanse, but then he has no TP, he can fall behind, it can become even more useless. This is just a G2 trying to call the bluff that Chasey is not going to be playing the Gragas top, but then again, he did, right? So in this game, I think it also highlights G2, their kind of concern around mid lane and knowing exactly what to pick when the Cassio is out. Considering the win for the Aurelion Sol that got nerfed a lot coming into 13.6, in the previous patches too, it didn't really, build confidence for me on the topic of Caps' performance. In this particular game, looking at the key moments that were the deciding factors after talking about draft is, of course, Chasey was struggling super hard on the top side. I think that Yike had the performance of a lifetime here on the Viego. Beautiful game. His early pathing was gorgeous. The way he skipped the Wolves, crossed into bottom side, denied the level 3 gank on mid, set up his bot for a cheater base, and then crossed back into top side and ended up on top side on Chasey's slow push out, and they managed to punish the the first 4 minutes was a masterclass from Yike. Super, super good. Here, Mad Lions, in this particular game, what we were shown is the fact that Zaya Rakan should not be given into the hands of Mad Lions for sure. They managed to get 2v2 kills, super, super good. Sometimes they overreach, as we see here in the example that I'm about to show you. There was a situation where they crossed into bottom side. I think Aurelion Sol had a very good read here of not going for the top wave and just collapsing on bot. And this was one of the better games of Caps where he finds this situation. But this, of course, after dying 3 times to Lee Sin and Lissandra. This was a massive swing in the game. And Mad Lions had, showed the trajectory where they're going to be the team that overreaches. But the big bonus for them was that they were very, very competitive in the bot lane matchup. And this was a big question mark, of course, when it comes to Mad. Coming into this third Drake fight, I was very concerned about G2 because if you compare items at this point in time, you see that everyone's kind of evenly matched, but the main core thing here that, of course, Red Side has as an advantage is the fact that Zaya is on 2 core. But the way G2 started off this fight, it couldn't have started better. They found the hook on Chasey. He was standing on a ward. I believe he gets spotted, and Mickey just lands a very, very gorgeous hook. I think if this hook doesn't land, that they can control this choke point, I think G2 contesting this Drake would have ended up being a mistake because the only way of entry is maybe if G2 can find like TP flank with Cannon. But all in all, this should be like a dream situation for a Gragas and a Zaya when the enemy is crossing through a choke point of yours. Thresh no flash, Aurelion Sol no flash. These would be tools that G2 would need in order to thrive. I'd imagine that G2's composition, just because they secured the Ocean Drake and the third Drake is spawning at 20 minutes, that they are going to be having a beautiful scaling trajectory in this game. Usually when you play champions like Aurelion Sol and Jinx, if you manage to secure one Drake, already you can delay the window of success. Like the game is not going to be decided before 2 core, basically at 2 core, which is usually what happens in most games because of how Soul works. But this fight started with Mickey landing a hook and G2 then securing the third Drake, and the fight already with this composition kind of sealed the deal, and already it looked like Mad Lions were in for a tough series. Beautiful sequence here from Yike. I think the way he played the Viego, definitely MVP performance here from Yike in this first initial game. Beautiful game, beautiful start. Mad Lions showed that they're very strong on the bottom side. They can compete and they were willing to actually take fights and they were connecting better, but they overreached and they managed to give G2 ways to claw back into the game. That leads us into game number 2. Game number 2 was a very different story. Here we have once again one of those situations where teams try to counter the Cannon. So Cannon first pick with Malphite out, so they've already removed some of the champions that people would like to pick into Cannon. Also G2 banning Jace, which is very strange, right? It's like, I think playing Cannon into Jace is something that is perfectly viable, perfectly okay. Jace has changed a lot as a champion, and he isn't that strong early as he was in the past, where Cannon was struggling at his hardest. I think this is perfectly playable for Cannon, and especially when you're banning Jace on red, you set up the Cannon for success, and it showcases a weakness here for G2 that they're not willing to play Jace themselves. The main thing I want to highlight is that Mad Lions managed to get Cannon, and then they also managed to get Zaya Rakan. After that loss, they still performed super well on the Zaya Rakan. They managed to get 2v2 kills, and they managed to get them back to back. An additional layer of the problem here for G2 is the fact that they force themselves to drop support, so they don't even get the Thresh to help out the Jinx. And then you're kind of putting yourself in a situation where you have to pick the Tam, but Tam is a very free lane for Zaya Rakan, and that's not words that you want to associate with Zaya Rakan, free lane, when, of course, you are in a situation where, you're laning against them, because obviously they scale super, super well. So G2 go for the Maokai Akshan. I think if you really wanted to play the Akshan, you could go Maokai Jinx and pick Thresh on 3. That could be an option, because I don't think anyone's going to ban Akshan 4-5. Nevertheless, I think there's still better things to pick into Cannon, like the Gragas and of course, the Scion, maybe the Ornn even. I think these champions just do better because you can just itemize Amar on first base and be perfectly happy laning against Cannon, and then you have a team fighter into Cannon that can kind of hold the flank and push him off. But here, Mad Lions 1-2-3 is just super, super gorgeous. And I think that's kind of the story of the whole series. Mad Lions always had a favorable 1-2-3 in the context of the current meta. G2 and Maokai Akshan Jinx. And then they follow up with banning Wukong and Trundle for the Maokai. Yon was kind of a strange ban in my mind here because Red Side is already quite AD heavy. I think Cassioban would have made a little bit more sense towards, of course, Caps. But they lock in Lee Sin Gragas, and I think that Mad Lions have a dream composition in this game. The main thing here that G2 highlighted in this series was that Caps' performance didn't improve throughout playoffs. I said in my preview that I expected Caps to be better coming into this weekend, but he seems to be in a limbo in terms of understanding what his role is supposed to be on the team. Niski is always playing the facilitator, whether it's Gragas, whether it's Lissandra, whether it's Ari. I think that's super, super good to set up Elioya for success. You have Nuke on BDS playing Mage every time in the shape of Syndra, Cassio, and Oriana. And I feel like Caps didn't really find his role. He was always shifting between a lot of things, and he looked rather. My brain wants to say unemployed. I don't know if that makes sense, but let's stick with it. Unemployed. So we have the Cassio on 5. And already, you have a Tamkench, you have an Akshan, you have these wonky-ass champions. Unless you're teleporting all over the map with Tamkench W, then I don't imagine that you're going to have a good time playing Tamkench in this game. Looking at some of the moments in the game that were deciding, I guess the thing that stood out the most to people was, of course, the pause.
At
The pause was very controversial.
18.46 in the game, Matt Hillesang paused to report a potential bug relating to Akshan's ultimate, resulting in his death. League officials have confirmed the bug, offered a chrono break to Mad Lions, which they have accepted.
They just did to get that.
There was a chrono break, right? There was a chrono break, and G2 were in a position where they had 2 Drakes up, but they were very far behind on gold. So this was a moment where, on paper, Mad Lions should be way stronger, right? There's no realistic way that G2 should be able to cross this choke point. You have 2 items not finished on Jinx. She managed to pick up some kills in Mad Lions, overreaching on the dives, but the conditions of Elioya were beautiful. Cannon super far ahead. Akshan completely in the dust, playing with the flash ignites. I don't understand why G2 tried so hard to put BB on these champions that don't make sense in the context of who he has shown to be on this team. I feel like BB is a very kind of one of the weaker laners in the LEC, but is a player that is very good in the team fights, right? When he's playing the Cannon, the Gragas, some of the tanks, I think this is the role that fits the best for BB. Here on the Akshan, he was struggling, was getting caught on side, getting killed on side, and the same thing for Caps. Caps was kind of just a target that was killed over and over again by Hilly's roams and the ganks of Elioya and the setup of course, Niski. We let this replay play. I don't know if this is the one that is chrono breaked or if this is the one that happens after the fact. Let's just take a look. This is the second version of how it played out. G2 weren't allowed to cross this choke at all, and they got pushed out completely. I know that this was very controversial because if we take a step back and we see the initial version of this play, there was a visual bug that Akshan's ultimate, it looked like it was flying from a different direction. This is what my understanding was. In my mind, the fact that, this chrono break is extremely controversial because the window of it is so strange. I think in a world where Mad Lions, if like the chrono break happened, like let's say in a 1 second time frame, I think that would have made a lot more sense because G2 managed to break out of that choke point and ended up being in a winning position here. It's very tough for Mad Lions to break this fortress that G2 have built here in the shape of the Cassio and the Jinx and the Maokai, and this position is far more favorable than what happened after, of course, the chrono break. So in my mind, I think it would have been a lot more fair to G2 if they could chrono break to this point. Like, let's say, sure, Rakan is alive, the ult doesn't go off, and that's the point we chrono break from. I think G2 is very favorable here to actually get this Hextech Drake and potentially, create a circumstance where G2 has fighting chances in this game. Instead, we had a chrono break all the way back, and we had a circumstance where, of course, they couldn't break through the choke point. So I'm just going to fast forward to that point in time once again. And here we have the second version of it where Caps can't cross. He's getting CC'd, and Mad Lions are very careful with not committing all the way and just throwing their spells. And Mad Lions managed to secure the third dragon of the game. And now they maintain that gold advantage. They maintain, the Hextech Drake gives you so much stats in terms of points. They managed to snack on BB on side over and over again, and Mad Lions had a pretty straightforward game to finish with the advantage that they managed to accrue here. So I just fast forward a little bit more. My take on the pause, right? I think that how far back it was chrono break was rather bullshit, because once again, right, this position here that played out, it's like this position that played out here. Hilly overreached, use ultimate. He's super far back. Like if we chrono break to this moment, right, then it's okay. It's like I understand there was a visual bug, and I don't blame Mad Lions at all for pausing. But the fact that the chrono break can't work in certain timing windows is a very bad thing for the game. So I'm quite disappointed this played out. My take on pauses too, I always tell my players to pause no matter what. If there's an interaction that you don't even know about, just pause. You don't get punished by Riot, and that's in the rules for pausing. Obviously, if you do it with malicious intent and you're just pausing and it's very evident to the referees that you're pausing to fuck with the game, then obviously it's not good. But if there is an interaction that you don't understand or you believe there's a bug in the game, you should always fucking pause. You don't want to be in that situation like in top esports game where you don't pause and Movement Motions doesn't work on the card solution and you don't end up going to, the playoffs because the card solution bugs. That is way worse. You should be able to rest easy knowing that you don't have to know every single fucking interaction bug in the game, right? So you should be able to pause. So I encourage every fucking player out there to pause when it comes down to it because, everything is on the line. Very frustrating for both players, especially frustrating for G2 here because they managed to get this winning position, right? They pushed them off, and Hilly's conditions are really shit here. Kazi is very weak and so forth, and this could have been, something gorgeous. And BB made a nice play with Akshan, Once again, he's a good team fighter, Mr. BB, but when it comes to the lane phase and the management of side waves, Mad Lions were very sharp at punishing BB, and Chasey was much better there. That leads us to game number 3. Game number 3, we had a Mad Lions red side win. So this is the draft that looked the strangest. So if you have no nameplates, Annie, Zeri, Lulu, I love it. We're looking at JDG. They have a free win in the pocket. I love seeing that. This is a JDG free win. But this is G2. They haven't showcased any Annie, and the one Zeri game they played was a loss against Fnatic, and they played Zeri Renata. They haven't played Zeri Lulu the entire year long, and Zeri Lulu was one of the most broken lanes. G2 made themselves an outlier within the league by not playing Yuumi, not playing Lulu. They played one Lulu game before this, and that was Varus Lulu, and that was a loss against SK Gaming. This 1-2-3 was kind of G2 showing, either they're showing, we're capable of playing what everyone else plays in the meta, or we are completely lost in our own sauce and we are going to try to make something work here. Once again, I highlighted before, Mad Lions always get off on a very good start in the 1-2-3. They pick Jace, Jinx, and Gragas and drop support. Very good targeted bans here in the 4-5 with the Morphite Scion. I would have liked a little Ornn here on 5. I think Ornn into Blitzcrank is super, super good because of how his W works. You can just W the Blitzcrank hook and you can be a frontliner and you can set up Bel'Veth for success and have a fine lane against Jace. Just play Spellbook and take it easy. I think this would have been a beautiful Ornn game, but instead we have a Darius. What on earth is Darius doing in this game? I said it on broadcast because we did the draft on the desk, is that the only purpose of Darius and Bel'Veth in this game is to split map and to invade level 1 because Darius has Nimbus Cloak and he has Ghost and he's very, very strong level 1 in the all-in fight because of his passive and his ability to, of course, use more combat summoners, and he has just very high base stats level 1, right? So that was very evident to me. They're trying to set up Bel'Veth for success, but picking Darius into Jace isn't like a crowd favorite. But nevertheless, BB had good conditions in this game, and I thought that this was a game that G2 would be winning. Mad Lions, they follow up with Blitzcrank. I thought Blitzcrank was kind of strange here, but Blitzcrank is one of those X-Factor champs, right? If you land the hooks, this champion is broken. If you don't, then you don't, right? The lane matchup bot is super, super hard because Jinx, Blitzcrank, even if they land hooks, in a lot of cases, Zeri Lulu just win anyway. You don't have enough burst or damage to get through a lot of the CC and the shields, and Zerilulu should have complete control over the lane phase. Sejuani was picked on 5 here. I thought that this would be a case where maybe they pick Cassio on 5 and then they look for just a Gragas jungle, something like this. But nevertheless, they pick Sejuani. Sejuani has a lot of melees on the team. Why not? Right? The main situation in this game, because as mentioned before, I thought that G2 had pretty good conditions to win in this game. You had Darius super far ahead. They managed to secure the Herald. They managed to play well around bottom side. They managed to get kills on Karzi. On Zeri. So the conditions were very good here for G2 to win the game. The main concern was that Mad Lions managed to secure some of the Drakes, but this was one of the moments in the game that definitely swung it in the other direction. So looking at this replay, right, I don't know if you see it, but Darius is currently in the bottom side. Darius is currently in the bottom side, and sure, they had a little window here where they could 4v4, and they could use the fact that they are in fog first, because Gragas showed on the top wave, but the fact that this fight extends after G2 used a lot of their tools is the key mistake here. And Darius could have chosen to connect with his team and open through mid instead of going on the neutral bot wave. This was a very crucial point of kind of, bad coordination of G2, because Darius is on the bot wave, he's farming a neutral wave, this wave is not into his tower, everything was fine, and then the flash hook from Hilly was gorgeous, and the extension here definitely made Mad Lions come back with a massive gold swing. Another issue, right, is that the blue side composition is very, very short range, and the only way realistically for them to start fights is through, of course, Annie. Annie has to flash Tibers, and that's the way you have to fight. Otherwise, but it's so easy for Mad Lions to always choose. It's like, who's going to take the Blitzcrank hook? No one really can. It's very easy for them to play on distance. They have the Jace and the Jinx. Gragas can disengage. Team fights are very easy to play for the Mad Lions composition. What is the purpose of Darius in such a comp, right? It's very difficult. We fast forward a little bit more to some of the more deciding moments of the game. There was some fighting back and forth. This was a very big swing as well for G2. I'm just going to find the crucial moment. Forgive me. I think this is the one where Mad Lions just chase into topside. They managed to get the triple, and any type of advantage that Jinx can get in her hands in such a game will be followed with a massive draft cap situation. Finally, we had this Annie flank here that got spotted by Mad Lions. They completely rip Annie to shreds here. He flashes into the wall. He doesn't get anything done. And this was completely lights out. Right? I think that G2 needed to find a better pick to kind of make their 4-5 a lot better. For example, this game, they played Jarvan later, but if you wanted to play Jarvan, this could have been a Jarvan game, right? You could have went Jarvan, Ornn. Imagine how much better that would have been together with Annie, Zeri, Lulu, a lot of engaged potential. Jinx has no thresh, no way for her to escape. They could have made so many better adjustments into the drafts that actually gave them fighting chances in some of the later Drakes. With how the game played out, they had an advantage, could have potentially won the game. Mad Lions found the punish, and Mad Lions had the better draft once again, stemming from the 1-2-3. G2 had a very strong 1-2-3, but not in the hands of G2, right? G2 haven't found success on these champions and haven't picked them for very obvious reasons, even though I believe Annie Zeri Lulu is very OP on the patch. Like, if Vitality start off with Annie Zeri Lulu, I'm very happy, right? They are very different players, a very different team. I think that this is not something that made sense in the hands of G2. So Mad Lions now on match point. Coming into game 4, I think G2 made some good adjustments, but this, the crucial thing here is that G2 managed to lose a game on blue side. So even if they win this one, they're going to play against blue side Mad Lions. And G2 have this big issue that they can't play Annie themselves. Very big problem. They don't want to play Annie themselves. They have to ban Rakan, they have to ban Vi, and they have to ban Cannon. Luckily, on blue side, they can first pick Cannon, so you can kind of play around with that a little bit. Right? So G2 choose to ban Vi, Rakan, Annie. They deny all of those picks from Hilly, which is, they went into the series not wanting to have forced bans, But these are the bans that everyone did against Mad Lions the whole season long. They banned Annie, Rakan, Vi. They denied these champions from Mad Lions. Sometimes Vi changed into Jace. Sometimes Vi changed into Gragas, but Rakan, Annie were champions that were constantly out. Right? The difference is that G2 needed to ban Annie on, of course, blue side. Of course, you could also look to first pick Rakan, do something like that. But nevertheless, they look for first pick Cannon, which we're happy with. Cannon first pick, beautiful. Mad Lions didn't show that they have some good answer into it. The first time they played Gragas, and they went for Gragas and Jinx. I really like the Lucian Nami here. I think Lucian Nami is very good into Jinx. I think it's very hard for her because she gets outranged, right, by rapid fire hits and also the culling, and the Nami slow is very difficult to deal with. I think there's only 2 bot lanes in Europe that I would like accept seeing on Lucian Nami, and that's G2's bot lane and of course Vitality's bot lane. An additional layer of this, right, is that Hilly has kind of revealed his hand that he always wants to play supports with agency. He doesn't want to play Lulu, doesn't want to play Thresh either, because he had an opportunity to play Thresh earlier but chose to pick Blitzcrank instead. So that's very important to highlight. They want for Rel, and Jinx Rel into Lucian Nami is a very tricky matchup in my opinion, very hard to play, but Rel, is the playmaker. Here, Mad Lions went for Malphite ban, which was very strange. I don't know what the fuck this Malphite ban is. I don't know what kind of smoke you're on, because the enemy team, are you expecting them to blind pick Malphite? Is that what you're expecting? Blind pick Malphite mid when you have Gragas flex? Very strange. I thought that G2 banning Cassio, I think this was probably in particular to set up the Nocturne, because I wouldn't want to play Nocturne against Cassio. That sounds like a fucking nightmare. Usually, I think removing Wukong is also super important here. But I can understand if you want to pick the Nocturne and that's what you're setting out for, because you're already showing the cannon and you have the Maokai open, I think that it can kind of make sense to leave Wukong open. So here, Viego gets banned and Maokai is left open. I think that Mad Lions were in the mindset that currently Maokai is not going to get picked because there is no more AD mid laners to play. And that's what Caps cooked up, right? The Nocturne. This is not something that Mad Lions had prepared, and that's why they picked Wukong over, of course, Maokai. Because Gragas is already showing. So if enemy picks Gragas together with Maokai, they need to find AD on mid or top, and that's picking AD top into Cannon is very difficult, as mentioned before. Maybe you play like a Jarvan, but then you're playing Jarvan against Cannon Lucian. That's pretty hard, I think. And of course, from Mad Lions' side, they're saying, oh, the enemy team already has Ken and Nami. What kind of AD mid are they going to be able to find if they pick Maokai? So we're going to ban Viego instead. That's the reasoning as to why Maokai was able to get picked here 4-5. So Caps' job was simple here, right? It's just to press R to mask the Lucian culling, and the Cannon engage and flanks, and that's super, super strong combo. The Maokai even is a strong combo with Nocturne. And also the fact that he does physical damage. He didn't have an incredible game, but at least, he, contributed to the draft in a very positive manner. Ari was locked in, and it's very strange and absurd how in Europe, Wukong and Ari are just losing every game, while in the Eastern regions, this is like pig ban 100%, just smurfing every game that it's in. When Chovy is playing it, or Knight is playing it, or your GOAT is playing it, it's just a completely different game. Looking at this one, I think the biggest difference here and the most important thing was just Hans Sama and Mickey and their contribution in the game. I wanted to highlight this moment here, right? Because G2 had this tendency to always look for level 1 vision, and this was a very nice punish here from Mad Lions. So I like the G2 draft here because they have a very strong bot lane matchup and they have the cannon. I think that's a winning recipe, right? Here, Yike dies, right? And he gets like this turbo tempo death, which is so silly because Elioya is now 1 HP. He needs to base, can't clear camps. And that makes Maokai so much faster in the jungle. This is only the highlights of the game, but Yike managed to steal away the blue buff. He managed to take Crab. And even though they gave away First Blood, through this Maokai got an advantage. Because Wukong needed to base. He needed to do a raw base, while Maokai has a 5-second death timer and has home guards. That's such a silly aspect of the game that you die and you gain so much tempo because of it. Riot implemented this a long time ago because, they they pretty much, wanted to limit the amount of snowball that you could do from early game kills because, people, the worst part about dying is the fact that you're losing minions and you have to go back to lane and so forth. And they wanted to limit the snowball from early game solo kills, right? And this is like the problem of it. It's like, how many games have you 2v2 killed bot? Then you have to push the cannon wave, and then you're pushing, and then the enemy super is level 2 is like killing your mid laner, killing top lane, and just completely 1v9 the game because you 2v2 killed them. How silly is that? I think that's crazy in itself. It's like home guards when you're dying and low death timers early game is mental. Chemtech Soul is mental. Chemtech Map is mental. Jungle is currently mental. Tamkench being able to W and scripters. So much mental things in the game. But League of Legends, we love it. I hope Riot can fix these things. God bless. Papa bless. Bless your face if you sneeze during the video. Let's continue. In this game, I think that the key thing, this was a very, very big moment in the game because Mad Lions here are posturing into topside and pull the Rift Herald into topside. They don't feel comfortable engaging. I think if you are not prepared to push the enemy out when they're collapsing on you, it means that you made a big fucking mistake pulling this Herald in the first place. Because this turns into a 50-50 situation on the Herald. I think this Maokai with the Ruby Crystal is looking way too fucking tanky, so you can't really engage and throw all your buttons on him. Mickey is collapsing here with level 6, and Hilly already took a lot of damage from the Rift Herald swinging like Mike Tyson. You have Hansama on bot, isolated against the Jinx with a pickaxe advantage. At least we just see this play out, and it was just a complete disaster. Hansama hitting the W, the culling starts. I think that probably you want to start this fight with the Q, but it doesn't matter because Hansama can just play it however the fuck he wants. They get the Herald. They manage to also secure the rotation back into mid. Lucian's getting platings. The worst aspect of this is that Mad Lions is so out of position to defend any aspect of the map. Lucian is getting platings bot. They lost the Herald. They can't defend mid. This was tremendous for G2. Tremendous. Very, very big. The rest of the game, I think plain and simple, G2 managed to slow down a lot and they played a lot more controlled in their decision making, which was, of course, a big plus. I think the G2's bot lane had a very strong performance. I think Mad Lions were playing very desperate and they were trying to bait G2 in that situation where they're swinging back and forth. And this was, probably the cleanest game out of the whole series, I must say, from G2. This is the type of game where it kind of follows more through what my expectations would be of the series. But of course, my expectations of this series were very, very far off because it ended up with a Mad Lions victory. The rest of the game, of course, is just the snowball of the Lucian and the Nami. They try to find some engages on the Lucian, but it just doesn't pull through. And G2 did a good job of kiting backwards, and then eventually G2 took home the game. So now, so far, we watched 3 games of Cannon, 3 games won on Cannon. Cannon is completely dominating, and the main issue now for G2 is that they have to kind of pick their poison coming into, of course, red side. So this is the pain point of losing a game on blue side, is that you have to go to red side, and there's a lot of champions that you play that the enemy, of course, also plays, but on top of that, there's a lot of champions that you don't play that you have to ban. So G2 are coming into this game 5 recognizing that the read of Mad Lions and the preparation of Mad Lions is just way, way better. They are trying to adopt some of those picks on their own. So Mad Lions continue with the Olaf Draven. The fact that they have room to target ban like this throughout the series once again highlights what big of an advantage Mad Lions have in terms of the champions that they are willing to play. I mentioned Rakan, I mentioned Annie, I mentioned Vi, I mentioned Kennen, I mentioned Jace. These are some of the best champions on the patch, Gragas too. These are 6 champions that are insanely powerful that G2 have a lot less prio on. They showed prio on Kennen and they're willing to play the Jinx. But other than that, they're lagging behind on some of these key picks. Mad Lions choose to ban Maokai. They know that they're going to either first pick Kennen or Vi. Here I was surprised. I thought G2 are going to straight up just lock in the Annie, Rakan, Kennen bans. I thought they're going to just open up Vi, and then when the enemy first picks Vi, you can slam Jace Gragas. If the enemy first pick Jace, you can pick Gragas Vi. If the enemy goes Vi, you can go Gragas Jace. I think that making sure that there was a three-way trade between Jace, Gragas, and Vi was definitely the way. Why the fuck do you leave Kennen open? So you're back on playing now Jace, which is a champion that plays out very similarly against Kennen in the late phase as Akshan. They want to accomplish the same thing and also falls under the same dangers. If he couldn't do it with Akshan, what makes you think he's going to be able to do it with Jace? Here the issue as well is I thought that they're gonna go Jace Gragas. Jace Jinx also makes sense because maybe you can then set up your bot for more success, and the enemy doesn't have the Zyra Khan as an answer into your Jinx. So partially it makes sense to slam the Jinx. You could also choose to go Jinx Gragas because the enemy is already showing Kennen, so they have to go Jace mid, and that's something that you can play around because Maokai is banned. I would have loved that a lot more. I think just Jinx Gragas should be the rotation and just play Gragas into Kennen. Let BB play Gragas if that's your plan, right? Because the enemy picking Jace is less likely and then you can just match on 3, right? But instead they go Jace, Jinx, and Mad Lions once again are able to lock in Wukong Gragas. They choose to drop their AD support, which of course can get dangerous, right? You have those power bot laners that everybody likes to see. Well, not everybody likes to see, but what we see most commonly. So you are going to go into deep waters. The main thing here, what was so important for Mad Lions, is the fact that they managed to find that Sejuani ban. You already know that with G2's composition, they need some bulky boy, some thick boy in the jungle that is going to support these fragile carries on G2, and they find Jarvan. So Jarvan is quite atrocious into Wukong, very bad into Gragas, not the greatest into Kennen, I'd say. And the main thing here is that you ban Zeri and Lucian, and they basically are in the state of mind that, oh, the ADs that are left are going to be the immobile ones if you think about the AD carries in the meta. But Mad Lions are not held back by any meta. They slam Ezreal Pike, and then Nautilus is picked on 5. In terms of the matchup, I don't think Ezreal Pike, level 1, I think they can do serious damage to Jinx and they can find opportunities. But the main thing here, right, is that Mad Lions have this composition that is insanely good against Jarvan. Jarvan is very weak here. Ezreal is also a champion that has very good range and is one of the few champions that can actually break the influence of Cassio and Jinx because Ezreal operates outside of their sphere of influence. Ezreal is just one of those champions. If he can get through lane and get to items, is very tricky to deal with because he's very slippery and at the same time, of course, has immaculate range and damage. I called Ezreal on the analyst desk. I said, that there's very little mobile champions to pick because here maybe they wanted to go for like an Ashe Rel lane, or maybe they go Varus Rel, or they go Aphelios X, right? That would be a potential angle, but they went for Ezreal Pike once again to just make sure that this Jarvan is as useless as humanly possible. Another thing is with this Pike is that Pike is very good at influencing other lanes, and Jace, Cassio, if these champions fall behind or burn flash against Wukong, Gragas, Kennen, they're going to be in a world of hurts. A big issue this game for me is just once again, G2 showcase that on the patch they are very fucking weak. My expectation was that, maybe they're going to be able to break the meta or do something in particular that is going to be facilitate their own style. But I feel like they couldn't really recognize what their own strengths were. And I think that their solo laners heavily underperformed on champions that were crucial in the current meta. So you have BB in the action game was horrible, right? This Jace game was also very atrocious. In regards to the key moments of the game, I think that this was just Red Side started off good and they managed to find some snipe kills on Hilly and they managed to get some kills here and there, especially after the level 1 was very explosive. But the key thing that made this game so insanely difficult for G2 to play is the fact that Jace died to a level 3 gank of Wukong. Jace died on side consistently, and Mad Lions were very good at setting up traps around how Jace wanted to farm side lane. And I think it's a fucking disaster that BB chooses to go for in this particular matchup. I think if you want to itemize for the matchup, you're better off itemizing just no Magic Mantle. I think buying Gore Drinker in this matchup is so fucking bad. I think it's atrocious. I think it's horrible. I think it's reportable. Really, really bad in my opinion. I think Casio into Gragas is perfectly fine, but in this series, Cap showcased that he is not good at managing all of the ganks that are happening in the game. But
with that gold damage,
the
with
next
the aftershock topping him
moments
up,
are
Jason looking for Broken Blade.
it's just a highlight reel of Broken Blade getting caught on side and getting murdered on side. Another layer of this, right, is Yike on the Javan is struggling super hard to find value. Really liked here that Chasey didn't flash. Like, he needs to keep his flash, of course, for the Drake fight that is coming. They managed to find some catches here and there. Like, this is very awkward, right? It's like, Caps, why is he posturing so fucking far forward when his teammate is on Rift Herald, the Jinx is on the top wave, and the Jinx is safe? Like, G2 making mistakes like this gave Mad Lions so many big advantages in the game. They found those catches. Here, Caps dies. Here, Mickey dies too. You know, he's getting murdered, tries to hook away, but he hooks into a fucking minion. The Ignite comes, and then the stun, and the TP is late. And then on top of that here, Elioya manages to secure the Herald too. Like, it's a complete disaster, you know, complete collapse here from G2. I think my hotel internet is giving up on me, man. I'm going to try to reset here. A little F5. Is it going to work? Is it going to work? Broom, 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 broom. Yeah, making silly car sounds is definitely going to help. All right, we have no internet. Beautiful. It's hilarious. Fantastic. I'm going to F5 that again. All right. So how's your day, guys? How was your day? You guys doing good? I'm doing fantastic myself. Thank you for asking. Yeah. Apparently this doesn't work. So basically in the game, right, BB kept getting caught on side, Caps was getting caught on side, and then eventually, you know, it just reached a point where Mad Lions were too far ahead with their composition, and they finished out clean. They played together as five, and you know, they had a very decent game. Eventually, Ezreal got too strong, and Cannon got too strong. Wukong was too far ahead, and Mad Lions closed out the game super well. My overall conclusions of the series, right, is that I think G2, in terms of their solo laners, I think that they were heavily underperforming. I think that they didn't know what to play on the patch. I think that they needed to explore some of these champions that, like, they needed to explore some Syndra. I think they needed to explore some more Gragas. I think they needed to prepare the Annie better. I think these are champions that have found success. I think Caps on Ari would have been something. I feel like something was just lacking there, right? Something was definitely lacking there. Caps was relying on the Casio, but he couldn't really find traction in the game because the pressure from the enemy, you know, jungle and support was just too high. And Niski was doing a very good job of keeping the wave state in a very tense spot around mid lane. BB as well, when he was playing the Jace and the Akshan, was just a liability, and Chasey got too far ahead on the cannon. I think the fact that, you know, there were locked bans that G2 needed to play with, and the fact that they lost their blue side game was a very big, you know, deal breaker here for G2's performance. I was one of the guys that said in my prediction, yo, Caps is the type of player that is going to step up in the playoffs. But this time around, he did not, and it was quite a letdown. I think G2, I think Yike had a decent performance. I think the Javan game, I think there's absolutely nothing to do, honestly. Like, this Javan game is just horrible. You can't play Javan against champions like that. I think it's a very rough game to play. So I don't really blame him for kind of running it in this game. I think that the fact that they don't play Annie, they had issues with the Rakan. I think the fact that they are not capable of playing Jace is also a very big problem. I think that some of the decisions in draft was also kind of an issue. Those are the things that I've already highlighted. On Mad Lions' end, I think that in terms of their meta read and the champions they're picking 1, 2, 3 is super good. Very good. If you look at all of these games, Gragas, Rakan, Zaya, beautiful 1, 2, 3. Mad Lions here, Kennen, Zaya, Rakan, beautiful 1, 2, 3. Here, Jace, Jinx, Gragas, beautiful 1, 2, 3. And you look at this Mad Lions game, not that beautiful 1, 2, 3, because Jinx and Rel, like, that's a combo that kind of struggles. So I think, that's an opening for Vitality when they're looking at the support pool. The fact that Hilly is refusing to play the range champions, rightfully so, right? Hilly on champions that have agency are just far better, so it's understandable, but that's where you can find some leeway, right? Lucian Nami was a good lock-in, and that's something that Vitality can use against Mad Lions tomorrow, because Vitality will have side selection because they have the higher seed. And then in the final game, the 1-2-3, right, we have the Kennen Wukong Gragas. Can be dangerous to go 4-5 with your AD and support, and it was a little bit of a struggle in the early game because Jinx and Nautilus found some angles. But the fact that Mad Lions actually fought together, had some setups around objectives, and that they were fairly resilient in a series that was very contentious is a very big plus coming into the Vitality match. G2 now need to take a step back, and the conversation about MSI is very interesting now because now, plain and simple, the winner of Summer is going to go to MSI. G2 can no longer be it, so the championship points are completely irrelevant. I wonder if G2 is going to get the same amount of hate that Mad Lions got because people claim that Mad Lions were frauds going to MSI. And I understand that, Mad Lions didn't really play that well. And in a circumstance where they lost today and still went to MSI, that would have been crazy. But now instead we have a G2 that is the 4th seed and is now going to MSI. Very tough situation for G2 because they have so much to figure out. They have a patch to figure out. They need to rest and recover after getting smacked on the head today. They have play-ins to play. Which I think can be nutritious, can be very good for you because you're going to be playing a lot of matches on a new patch. Can be sometimes tough, as the number 1 seed of the region to go into a tournament and jump straight into a best of 5 against seed 2 LCK, seed 2 LPL, or if you're really fucking lucky, seed 2, of course, North America. Golden Guardians, baby. I think that's like the luckiest role that you can have on all time. Isn't it crazy to think that somehow in a tournament, Golden Guardians, Billy, G2, and T1 are valued the same in the seeding system? That shit to me, that shit's crazy. That's hilarious to me. That is that's funny. That's funny. Let's be honest. It is funny. It is fucking funny. I don't know what else to do. It's just, I don't know how to solve the seeding system, but it is fucking hilarious. So, because some team is going to giggle their way to the bank. Out of the top 8 teams, from the major regions that are going to qualify into that situation, Golden Guardians is definitely the freebie. There could be a situation where Golden Guardians don't make it through best of 3s. But honestly, it could be a situation where G2 maybe don't make it through best of 3s. So I'll hold my laugh until the end. Either way, it is going to be a fun one. Coming into tomorrow, I think the main thing that I want to highlight, I do believe Mad Lions is looking like the stronger team coming into this. I am not too excited about Photon and Bo individually because mechanically they did underperform in the previous series and now the stakes are going to be higher. I think that Vitality's power in draft is the fact that they have a very strong Lulu Zeri, they have a very strong Annie, and they have a very strong Lucian Nami, and they have an ability to play all the topside champions. I think that's a big plus in draft. They are capable of playing the Jace. They can play the Kennen too. They are capable of playing Lucian Nami, Lulu Zeri, and these are things that can be very well utilized in the draft. They have answers into Jinx, and they can also play the game of stealing champions away. The main thing that can be concerning in draft, if we look at the flaws of Vitality, is that when they're playing the Maokai and maybe the Vi, these facilitating junglers that are there to farm and to control the flow of the game, that is where Bo looks a lot weaker. When it comes to situations where Vitality could, show strength, it is when the game is very scrappy. But then again, Mad Lions showed today that they're very happy to play scrappy games. So that is going to be, absolutely brutal. I think that Mad Lions, based on what they showed today, the level of cohesiveness, I think was better than what we've seen from Vitality so far. Today, the series was quite dirty. It wasn't a perfect series by any stretch of the imagination. I imagine that tomorrow's series is going to be just as dirty. I do believe that Mad Lions has a slight edge. But Vitality, as I mentioned in draft, they have a lot more options when it comes to the context of the current patch than G2, I would say. And the main concern is, what kind of Bo and Photon are going to show up on the day. I think Bo is very good in scrappy games, and that's something that Mad Lions like to invite. So maybe Bo is going to have an absolute pop-off performance. Photon against Chasey, I think that's going to be also a very competitive one. But I think things always come down to how you connect around drakes and objectives, and this is where Vitality have struggled so far. But I'm very curious to see, the main thing is G2 had problems locking down Mad Lions' bot lane, and Vitality's bot lane phase isn't their biggest strength. I feel like Hilly is going to be able to impact the map in a way that is going to be super, super good. I imagine coming into tomorrow, blue side is going to be pretty much. I think that what we're going to see is Vi, Rakan, and then a little Jace ban on blue side for our homies in black and yellow. Look to first pick Annie Cannon. I think that's the way. And then 2-3, just slam Zeri, Lulu, Lucian, Nami. I think that's the way. I think that considering, when you look at, of course, Mad Lions side, I believe that Lulu ban is going to be something that is very good. Just target the Lulu, remove the Zeri Lulu out of the pool, and then also maybe consider banning Lucian too, to just put a lot more pressure on the bottom side. And I think that's something that can work. Another thing that I'm hoping that Vitality has prepared is Aphelios, because it all comes down to that same thing. It's like, what are your answers into, of course, Jinx if it gets 1-2 picked by Mad Lions, because that's what it's going to come down to. Another layer of questioning, right, is, Kaiser didn't show any prior on Thresh, so it limits a little bit more what you can play together with Jinx. I am curious to see, in a situation where Annie is removed, what, of course, Perks is going to choose to play mid lane. We saw a Yone game, we saw an Ari game. I think these are champions that are good on the patch. The main question still, right, is like, will you have room to remove the Gragas? Because the Gragas is still doing super, super great things. It was funny. Gragas was pick ban every game, and then it didn't get changed at all, and people stopped picking it completely, and now it's coming back. Mad Lions just started to lock it in again. Currently, Mad Lions is 9-1 on it, and it's something to also consider when it comes to your own personal bans. Maybe you try to play against the Vi, and you just see how it goes in a situation where the enemy team doesn't have access to the Gragas, because the Gragas Vi is one of those combos. I thought today that G2 in the final game were going to ban Annie, Rakan, and then finally Cannon. So that's going to be interesting to pay attention to. But it also comes back, to Kaiser. He's the player that likes to play Rakan himself, and he likes to play, they like to play the Annie mid, and this is where things will get super, super interesting. But so far, I have to say that I think that Mad Lions' momentum is going to carry over into tomorrow, and I think that they've shown a lot more grit, and they showed a very positive side to themselves. They were quite disjointed throughout the season, throughout spring split, sorry. And yesterday, they were quite connected and they fought together, whether it was bad or good. The first step is always playing together as a team, and Mad Lions, I believe, is the favorite coming into tomorrow. But it's definitely going to be a very different series than the one that we saw today. That's it for my summary of the day. I hope you enjoyed it. Tenki is under the weather, so my version of this is basically I just one take Drake. I recorded in one go. My voice is completely gone. I'm gonna celebrate with my Vice here, a little Coke Zero, not an ad. Don't drink it; it's very unhealthy for you. Fuck them. I'll catch you on the flippity flop. Yeah, if you sneeze during this video, bless you and bless your face. I'll catch you on the LEC tomorrow. Bye bye.